The following presentation was presented on April 3rd, 2019 at the University of Mississippi's Center for the Study of Southern Culture. And I wanted to share it with you today because it suggests, I think, some needed strategies for being indigestible when one is in the belly of the racial pandemic beast. So, a soul comes home to her Mississippi roots. Okay, I do this tray. Okay, all right, good, yay. All right, my given name is Wintonette Joyce Hardiman. I am the daughter of Winton Joy Hardiman and Thelma Ayers Hardiman. Now, my name is part of a Southern tradition. It is typical in the South that if you want to name a girl after their father, you add a net to it. Hence, you get Wintonette, Antoinette, Tonette. And so my mother named me in that tradition. She also, because she was so deeply in love with my father, decided to have me take his middle name of Joy, but she added a C-E onto it. So I was christened Wintonette Joyce Hardiman. But I reclaimed my identity when I went off to college, and I dropped the CE because I looked in an etymological dictionary, and Joyce was etymologically meant horse. And I wasn't really into, at that time, I had kind of buck teeth and I was tall and ganky. So I didn't want to be walking around with the label of horse. So I went back and adopted my father's middle name, Joy, which turns out to be quite amazing because as I've done research, I found out that I am fourth generation Joy. That my father's middle name was Joy, his father's middle name was Joy, and his father's name, his father who was born in slavery, his middle name was Joy. So my parents were children of Mississippi parents who had moved out of the South during the Great Migration. My images of the South were for the most part, after having grown up in Buffalo, New York, my images of the South were really based on media. They were based on Gone with the Wind, Walt Disney, and stories overheard from people who left the South and never wanted to go back. I hated the images of buckwheat and Topsy and Uncle Remus when I was growing up. I grew up right at the end of segregation, and so their childlike behaviors and their perceived subsequent attitudes, subservient attitudes, made me feel ashamed and embarrassed. It was not until much later that I realized that Uncle Remus really was a cultural custodian, that he was the one that kept all the stories and all the folklore. But because I was ashamed of the people, I was ashamed of the folklore. And so I was distant by the master narrative from accessing the treasures that he had to bring me. I also learned much later that Topsy, who I hated because she always said, "Ooh, I was born in a cabbage patch," was not in fact born in a cabbage patch, but in fact was a enslaved person whose parents and grandparents, etc., had been stolen from Africa and stolen from a very, very rich tradition that had nothing to do with cabbage patches. For 2 weeks every summer, my parents loaded the car, got an AAA triptych, lots of maps, and the Green Book to go on family vacations. My job was the map reader, and my parents were so determined to make sure that I was exposed to a larger world that by the time I was 13, we had been to 48 states, all of the Canadian provinces, including Newfoundland, Mexico, and Cuba. And at that time, I thought all families traveled with picnic baskets in their car, stayed in national parks because they were open and they weren't segregated, and went to the bathroom in Maxwell House coffee cups that you kept on the back seat and emptied when it was dark so nobody could see you, so nobody could hurt you. My parents were readers, and so there were lots of books around the house and magazines, etc. They subscribed to the Black press, to the Pittsburgh Courier, the Baltimore African American, the Chicago Defender, Ebony, and Jet. And I was a ferocious reader, so I read them all and was terrified by what I saw with the inhumanity of white people and their children. The image of Emmett Till in Jet magazine was so traumatizing that I made a vow never to let white people know how smart I was so they wouldn't kill me. I remember at that point, I started dropping my eyes when I passed white people so that no random whiteness would think I was uppity. When the voter registration drive started in 1964, I wanted to drop out of college and join the Mississippi Summer. I had worked with my parents in voter registration and political campaigns for people in my community, and I collected money for UNICEF at Halloween. So I wanted to be a part of the civil rights movement. But even though my father was the president of the local NAACP, this was not an option. My parents wanted me to be safe, so I stayed up north. I stayed in college. I joined the counterculture and the anti-war movement. I majored in classical Western literature and 16th century Italian comedy, the 16th century Commedia dell'arte. I spent a summer in Woodstock as a mime, married and divorced a very nice Jewish man, ran 2 theater companies, and then began what turned out to be a 40-year career in higher education. When I realized that I had become physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually disconnected from my roots, my community, and my Blackness, I decided I had to reprogram myself. I had to detox myself. So I went into isolation, I researched, I studied, I got a doctorate in ancient Egyptian literary stories. I designed an urban campus based on the Temple Library University complexes of ancient Egypt, the Tacoma campus, and made a commitment to the liberating arts and to an African worldview. I discovered that it was okay to be Black and brilliant. And that being Black and brilliant was my birthright and my global legacy. So I replaced lies with truths. I faced my addictions to the illusionary notion that I might have some power and privilege and position. The closer I stood to white people, I got rid of some baggage and decided that it was time to claim my roots and my truths. It was time to liberate my soul. So I spent the last 40 years doing ancestral and ancestral African and diasporic research. I traveled around the world. I went to, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Senegal, Mali, Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Gambia, Cameroon, Spain, Russia, England, India, Brazil, Ecuador, Trinidad, Jamaica, Mexico, looking for the truth, looking for images, positive images of African people. And I saw them everywhere. I saw them not only in the building of civilization, but I saw them in the fight for liberty and liberation over and over and over again. And so as I travel this world, I also have the blessings of being able to design curriculums and creative productions based on that research. But after a little while, I decided that it was time to come home. It was time to not just look at my African roots or my diasporic roots, but to look at my family roots, to look at my Southern roots, to reclaim all that of which I had been ashamed. So 2 years ago, my daughter and I finally went to Mississippi to uncover and discover our African American roots. And I found out a whole bunch of things. First of all, I found out that I didn't know a whole bunch about geography. Because I always thought the Mississippi Delta was down there someplace next to New Orleans, but it wasn't. The Mississippi Delta was a plain, an alluvial plain created by the flooding of the Mississippi River and the Yahoo River, and that it contains some of the most fertile soil in the world, just like the Nile. The next lesson I learned was about how deep my Mississippi roots were. I found out that on both sides of my family, both my father's family and my mother's family had deep Mississippi roots. And that my maternal grandfather, and that's his picture, was born in Coldwater, Mississippi, as was his father and his father before him. And I found this to be interesting. My grandfather's name was Winton, but his brother's name was Hercules, and his sister's name was Cleopatra. Even back in those days, our ancestors knew the power of language and the power of imaging, so they didn't call their kids Topsy. They called their kids Cleopatra, they called their kids Hercules, they called their kids Oprah, to basically give them a destination to grow into. Going back to my Mississippi roots, I got a chance to be informed about what really happened to those people who participated in the Great Migration, those people who were looking for economic liberation, for people who were looking for social liberation, those people who were looking for physical health, liberation from disease. Those people who moved north. And so my grandfather was part of that movement, and he moved to St. Louis, Missouri. He worked in as a trolley cuffer, the people who put the trolley cars together, and he was, and then he went from working on the trolley cars to working as a Pullman porter, and he became one of those large groups of very strong, industrious, hardworking Black men who all were called George. By the people who rode the cars and who just looked at them as objects meant for their service. After he did the Pullman porter thing, he became a minister in the AME church and died with his own church. I really kind of like him because I think that we have these images of people who are fighters and stuff like that, have no senses of humor or no senses of fun. Well, what he did was he promised his new wife, he had a second wife, that he would give her an 8-room house. That's how he got her to marry him. So she married him and she waited for the house. And what he did, because he had just gotten off the trolley car people, he bought 8 trolley cars, put them in circles. All right, put it in a circle and put electricity in them and put plumbing in them, and then built a little garden in the middle of them with a chicken coop for chickens so that his wife could have fresh eggs in the morning. And when people talk about about these people as having no imagination, totally content with their lives as enslaved people, they were so lying. I found out that all Blacks were not slaves or sharecroppers, that they were hardworking, industrious, and God-fearing, that they were farmers, store owners, as well as teachers and preachers. And this is my great aunt graduating from college in the 1930s. I found out that not all Blacks lived in the rural southern plantations, that there were towns, that there were actual towns created for, by, and run by freed Black people. And the freed Black people, when they would get land, they would not only just buy stuff for themselves, but they would do things for the community. So in these all Black towns, there would be schools, there would be hospitals, there would be healthcare facilities. And so these were people who got their strength not relying on the goodwill of allies, but who basically took control over their own destinies and moved forward and created towns that still remain. I found out that African cultural retentions were alive and well in Mississippi when I was in Clarksdale, and I ran into this Senegalese musician who played me a blues song that he played me the Senegalese song, the song in Senegalese, and then he gave the translation of the song as it exists now in the blues, showing that the circle can never be unbroken, showing that the culture will always be maintained, maybe changed, but maintained. That was an important lesson. And second to lastly, right? I got a chance to see resistance to the single story. And this was been doing, but in the work of both Black and white and brown people in Mississippi. They are coming together to retell the story, to tell the story in a different way. And so, these plaques now are all around the campus of the University of Mississippi because the Black Student Union insisted that they tell the truth, and there were some good faculty and some good community members that work with them. So we have here a statue that celebrates the Confederacy, but right next to it is a statue that says, the Confederacy was built on the lives of over 1 million Black people. And so this is a symbol, yes, to them, but it's also a statement that the defeat of the Confederacy meant the freedom of Black people. And all through the campus, you can see it. There will be a building that'll say, this building was built in 1890. And then there'll be a sign next to it that says, and it was built by Black people, men, women, and children who were skilled laborers. People forget that. You can't make a brick unless you've got skill. It's a long, long, patient process. And they were the bricklayers, and the signs there say it. So history is being reclaimed. History is being, the truth is moving to the front. And lastly, I got a chance to pay homage to one of my heroes, Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Hamer, who said that they were sick, that she and others were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they fought back, and they fought back, and they fought back. And so I not only got a chance to see her, but I went to the home of Ida B. Wells, a champion of the anti-lynching movement, and I told her thank you. And then I went to see Bessie Smith, and to the hotel where she had died because she had been denied medical treatment. And I told her that we would try to do better and that we were doing better. And in conclusion, what I want to say is I want to give thanks to everybody out there who has striven to put truth in the place of falsehood, who has fought to put right in the place of wrong, who have worked to put illumination in the place of ignorance. All power to you. All power to you. Understand that the research and study and finding one's roots is essential if you want to stay indigestible when you're in the belly of the beast. Embrace your root, embrace your truths, and don't get trapped in somebody else's single story. Ashe.
Thank you. Give Dr. Hardiman a round of applause. This time, this is a tradition that we have at the Tacoma campus where it's called Give Backs. We have 249 people here right now. And
How
so,
many?
yes, 249 people. Thank you.
Hey, people. Look at you all. I can see some of you. Oh,
Look at us teaching.
All right, in the car. Hey, Keisha.
hey, Larry. Oh, all these people I can see. Hi.
So Dr. Hardiman just gave, and this is called Give Back. And what we want to do, we want to give back to Dr. Hardiman. We want you to don't be conscious of of your time of speaking, but tell Dr. Hardiman, it could be a short thank you or what you got from this, from her ancestral art presentation. And I don't know, I guess.
Praise the Lord, Dr. Hardiman.
Hey.
Praise him. You made my heart full. When you talking about reclaiming, our healing won't come forward until we reclaim our history, our heritage, our identities, all of us. Yes, I'm so happy you went back and reclaimed our ancestral roots, and then how you reclaimed our African American heritage as well, because that's all of who we are. And we've got to be made whole again. We've got to start the healing process with healing our identities. I think that is the key to our own health and well-being as we move forward with all of this turmoil. At the root of what we need to be is healed. We know that we're responding to the ills that have happened to us in the past, but our healing comes from our reclaiming of our soul and our lives and who we are. Most of that comes from things that was taken and stolen and stripped. But when we can restore like this, oh my God, my heart is full, Dr. Hardiman. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ashe, ashe, ashe.